Hey guys, Gamer here, bringing you another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet competitive singles video. So, today I wanted to talk about the Stellar Terror type, my thoughts on it, whether I think it's going to be viable, what Pokemon I think it's going to be good on, and just my general impressions of it overall. So, we're also going to be talking about the mechanics and how it works too. I know there's not a whole lot of information out there right now, and some of it got really confusing. It's not like as intuitive as I thought it was going to be when it first came out, especially as far as like the damage calculations go for the moves. So we'll kind of start talking about the damage mechanics first and how it's going to affect Pokemon, how the typings work, and then we're going to jump into Pokemon Showdown and take a look at some Pokemon and situations where I think it's going to be really good, situations where I think people are going to try to use it, and then just talk about like whether it's actually going to be viable over running other Terror types. So without any further ado, let's hop into things. Now, the Stellar Terror type doesn't actually affect weaknesses or resistances on Pokemon, which is something that I was wondering if this was going to impact or not. At first, when I was playing through the base game, I almost thought, like, is it add every single type to Pokemon? But then I realized how ridiculous that would be. There'd be some types that would be crazy super effective on Pokemon, and other types that just didn't affect them very much. And no, that's all wrong. They just have the same base typing as they did before. So if I had a Meowth that terrestrialized Stellar Terror type, it was only ever going to be weak to fighting still. And then Ghost types, it's going to be immune to, as an example. So taking a look here at the battle mechanics. So when you Stellar Terror Pokemon in battle, it's going to get a 100% boost for same type attack bonus moves one time. You're only ever going to get a boost for one type attack one time. So if I had 4 different attacking moves, all with 4 different types, I could use each one of those moves in a row and get a boost from the Stellar Terror type at least one time. And if that move was the same type as my typing, so let's say, again with the Meowth example, let's say I use a normal type move, instead of that same type attack bonus being the 1.5 damage you normally get, it's going to be doubled, but only once. So if I use Slash on it, it's going to do double power only once. The next time I use Slash, even if I'm still terrestrialized, it's only going to do that normal Slash damage that it would do even if I wasn't terrestrialized in the first place. And then if I'm using other moves, so if, let's say I use Bite. Bite is a dark type move. It's not one of my types. It's only going to get a 20% boost and only one time. So if I use Bite a second time, now it's going to go back down to that normal base damage after that first time I used it. So it's kind of interesting, and this is very disappointing for me too. I was really hoping to be a little bit more than this, especially since you only get that boost one time you use that move. Maybe when they were doing testing and whatever, it seemed too powerful to get like a 50% boost to all like non-stab moves, even just for one time use. But 20% just seems so like negligible that it doesn't really seem worth even wasting your Terra type in a battle a lot of times for me. Just to get that little bit of boost. There's very rare situations where that 20% is actually going to put you in a good damaging range to find a 1-hit KO. It could definitely make the difference between getting 2-hit KOs a lot of times, but when you only get that boost one time, you have to be really careful about it, right? I think there are some unique situations where that boost can make a difference, but you're really going to have to know your like damage calculations. It's going to have to be for someone really, really specific, and that's very, very advanced. And I think for a lot of people, it's going to be better just to rely on like a more defensive Terror type or a very specific like offensive Terror type to find extra stab coverage, get that like triple stab coverage, or find some really, really big damage. We've seen Pokemon like Dragapult be very, very strong going Terra Dragon and Dragon Darts because it's such a strong move. You can give it the choice band and it's just going to find that damage and start sweeping with its natural stats and that boosted damage. But with Stellar Terror types, you don't really have that option, right? It's like all in on one move one time, and hopefully you have the right matchup at the right time. And then the other thing about Stellar Terror types too is it's going to affect the move Tera Blast. So Tera Blast normally would just be a base 80 power move. It's either going to be physical or special based on how, like, what's going to be more damaging after you've terrestrialized. Otherwise, it's just a base 80 power special type move. But if you go Stellar Terror type, now it's going to be a 100 base power move but it's going to lower your attack and special attack after the first time you use it. And the other thing is that you're only going to get that stellar boost once. So you're only going to get a 20% boost anytime you use this. You're never going to get like a 100% boost. It's only ever going to be 20% boost if you're using Stellar Tera Blast too, which is kind of limited. But then it'll always be super effective on other Tera types, no matter what Tera type it is. It's always going to be super effective on it. And then for like any other base typing, it's just going to be like a neutral 100 base power move. So that can be nice in some situations, but it's kind of limited. It's very, very specific. So if you force them to Tera first and you were able to come in and just now you have an option to deal with some Pokemon, I definitely think there are some situations where if you just bring the wrong Pokemon, especially in like Battle Stadium singles, and then they get a good Tera on you early, it can be really, really hard to deal with. So it could be somewhat reasonable to, if you have the space and your like moveset, tech that in, and you can just come in and surprise them with the Stellar Tera Blast just as like a last stop option. But now you're crippling your offenses too, unless you're a contrary Pokemon. And that's going to make things very difficult for you going forward. So it's kind of interesting little mechanics there. And then also Terapagos has some interesting interactions too. I'll talk about it right now, even though it's going to be banned as like a restricted legendary Pokemon for right now in like Regulation F, which is just coming up in a couple of days here. Terapagos doesn't have any limitations. It's just going to get a 20% boost on all its moves, and that boost doesn't ever run out. So like how it would run out on another Pokemon after one use, that doesn't happen. It just keeps getting 20% boost on all of its moves the rest of the battle. And I'm trying to remember. There's something else specific. Let's read this here. Terapagos. So, okay, and then normal type moves will always have 100% boost on it. That's the other thing, except for Tera Starstorm, which is one of its exclusive moves here. So yeah, without any further ado, let's hop into Pokemon Showdown and start talking about some Pokemon that I think are going to be really good with Stellar Tera types, and then the situations where I think people might try to run it, but I just don't think it's going to be that viable here. So, as I mentioned previously, I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to jump on those contrary users. And for those of you that don't know, contrary is an ability that basically swaps the stat changes that you're going to get. So, if you're using a boosting move like Dragon Dance, instead of getting +1 speed, +1 attack, now you're getting -1 speed, -1 attack, and it's going to reduce your stats. There's some really cool interactions with this. One of the big examples is Superior, because Superior can go Leaf Storm. It's a base 130 power stab, grass type move. You've got some excellent speed on you, and then you can just kind of snowball from there, and this Pokemon gets really strong. And I think that people have run contrary Pokemon with moves like Leaf Storm and Superpower to be really strong, and now the Stellar Tera Blast is going to also get that boost where it's going to boost your attack and special attack. So I think a lot of people are going to jump on trying to use those contrary users right away. But in my experience, I've already been doing a lot of battle testing and just on some casual battles and stuff for Battle Stadium singles, and it's not that strong if you know what's coming. I think it's pretty predictable a lot of times. I'm not saying there's some situations where it's not going to be good, but especially on a lot of these contrary Pokemon, they already were designed from the game intenders, like designers, like with the intention of having good moves to use with that ability that's going to have good synergy. So in the case of Superior, it's going to be Leaf Storm. In the case of Eternatus, they already have Superpower. And so you really have to look at those options and see, does it benefit more from getting that Stellar Tera type where it's only going to be ever hitting neutral unless they're terastallized, and getting just that +1 boost? Is that really going to be something that's useful for you, or are just relying on the natural moves useful? In the case of Superior, I think that most times Leaf Storm is just going to be better. Having that stab 130 damage option, and then going +2 every turn is huge. Even if it's a resisted hit, you're going to snowball and get to +6 so fast on this Pokemon, to where if they catch you with your pants down, like on a good switch in, they can just start snowballing with their superior. You have to switch first turn and then find a way to deal with it. And that can be really, really threatening. It's not going to happen quite so fast if they're only going +1 every turn. It's a lot easier to deal with, especially when they're not going to find super effective hits and you can play around not terastallizing like on a switch-in Pokemon. So it can still be very strong. It's just I think it's kind of limited. I don't think it's quite as good as people imagine it's going to be. Now, one Pokemon I want to talk about is Eternatus. Enamorus. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep saying Eternatus. I get those two mixed up. So, Enamorus here with the contrary ability, I think it's going to be pretty good. It's a special attacker. I mean, it's got a decent attack stat too, and it's one that runs the superpower. But you didn't have a great special option. And so being able to get that stellar boost and then just going +1, I think is going to be really good on this Pokemon. If we go Tera Blast here, go Tera Stellar, and I believe... Okay, so do you have Recover? I thought you had a recovering move. Do you not? So it looks like Draining Kiss and Rest might be your only option. So you might have to go Chesto Resto on this guy. But I do think it could be really strong. You have a really good speed here naturally. So if you go like Max Bulk, Max Speed, you can go like Stellar Tera Blast and Superpower. Maybe you want the Draining Kiss and Rest. Like Draining Kiss and Rest. And I could see this Pokemon being very, very strong. I know some people were trying to make Contrary Superpower work. I just didn't think it found the damage it needed a lot of times. I think there was just so many other strong Pokemon right now with all the power creep we have in Scarlet and Violet. And I think Enamorus is probably the big winner out of all the Contrary users. I like Malamar's back in the game now, but I don't think Malamar makes too good of use of it because Malamar is just a little too slow a lot of times. I believe you have the... Oh, you don't even get Thunder Wave anymore. See, a lot of Pokemon that I used to think get Thunder Wave don't get it anymore. Maybe Malamar never had it, but Lapras was a big one that I know used to have Thunder Wave, and it just doesn't have access to that anymore. So yeah, I think Enamorus with Contrary is going to be really strong. So outside of Contrary Pokemon, is this viable with the battle mechanics we've seen? And like I said, I think it's very, very limited here. I've actually been using a Stellar Tera type Pokemon. I have been using Iron Boulder, but I've been using this Pokemon as like a Focus Sash Pokemon. And the thing about Iron Boulder is, you have that dual typing, right? You have Rock and Psychic. I think dual typing Pokemon are going to benefit way more from this because it is unfortunate when you're trying to find that offensive Terror type. Do you want to choose which type is like the best one to choose? I think it's more obvious on a Pokemon like Scizor when they're going to be going for like the priority boosted bullet punches and just want to get that extra steel damage. But I think that there are situations too where it's like, oh, I wish I could have gotten boosted moves. And I actually think Scizor is another really good candidate too for a Stellar Terror type. I think Pokemon with dual Terror types that can take advantage of offensive Terror types in general, just by having a good speed tier or by having good priority options, appreciate the Stellar Terror type because it's going to be boosting those stab damages. And I think that most times that's what you're looking for, is you're going to want to have like double boosted stab damage where you can find that 1-hit KO with that extra damage on one Pokemon. New Pokemon comes in, you can hit them with a really, really powerful, like, double boosted move. You might not find the 1-hit KO, but it could make the difference, too, between find that 1-hit KO with the Pokemon that you're in against, and then, that next turn against, like, a much bulkier Pokemon, finding a 2-hit KO just from those extra boosts, just from that double boosted, other stab-type move that you're running, and then a 20% boosted coverage move. And I think that damage works out. I've looked at enough examples of this. I think some situations where we're going to see this is like a bulky Pokemon like Ursaluna Blood Moon form coming in. Let's say you like Tera Stellar boosted stab option against opposing Pokemon. Ursaluna Blood Moon comes in and your physical Pokemon. It's normally very naturally physically bulky, but you might just find that damage to find that 2-hit KO when it was otherwise just going to be able to survive and take you out. But the problem with that example too is Ursula in the Blood Moon form is so powerful. Good luck trying to stay in and survive that long. Thankfully, it's kind of slow, but it's got the vacuum wave, so it's just interesting. It's really going to be interesting. And despite the testing I've done, we're really not going to know until Battle Stadium, like singles, like Regulation F drops, and we really see the interactions play. I do think though there's a lot of viability just for Pokemon, especially with like. Just like more offensive like typing in general, find the advantage for it. And in my Iron Boulder example too, I really like it because just give it the moves really quick. So Mighty Cleave. I've been using Zen Headbutt on this guy, then Earthquake, and I've been boosting with Sword Stance. So I really like this example a lot because you're finding 1-hit KOs when you otherwise wouldn't. And then also, you have that Focus Sash as a crutch, so you're going to have the same weaknesses anyway. And so it doesn't really matter if you Tera. You might just find situations where you don't want to risk running the Sword Stance, and you just go Tera right away. And you find that boosted damage, you find the 2-hit KO, and then you're getting a little bit of boosted damage on the next Pokemon with that high speed stat. So I think it's limited. It's not as good as I would have hoped it would be. You know, I was really thinking that if this is how the mechanics were going to work, that other moves would have at least gotten like a 1.5 times damage boost instead of a 1.2 times damage boost, even if it's just one-time use. And yeah, good luck out there. It's going to be complicated. I think most times if you're feeling iffy about it though, and you want something more reliable, just go for a more defensive Tera type that's going to benefit that Pokemon. It's going to find a resist against like a super effective move, or it's going to give you an immunity, or it's going to just give you that reliable stab damage. But don't be afraid to try it out either. If you're going to run an offensive Tera type on a Pokemon anyway, don't be afraid to try the Stellar Tera type, because you're usually ever going to need that boost on that typing one time to find that KO. And then they're probably going to bring another coverage Pokemon against that matchup. So being able to get them with some boosted damage and just kind of go 1-for-1 plus with some extra damage to make it easier for your next Pokemon to come in is going to be kind of nice too. Outside of that though, really it is just like an offensive battle mechanic. There's no real reason to run this defensively by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that just goes into why it's so limited. I'm much more of the frame of mind of I'd rather run a defensive Tera type 9 times out of 10 anyway on a Pokemon, because you only get 1 Tera per battle, and that can make the difference between winning or losing a battle. I really try to wait till the last minute to run my Tera type a lot of times, and just trying to find that situation where you're going to throw that opponent off guard, where they think they're going to get the edge on you, and then you just go, nope, not today, and you can either set up on them, or just be able to take them out in one shot, and some extra coverage you wouldn't otherwise get, makes such a big difference. So to just rely on it as a crutch, you know, just try to go for an offensive Tera type, just for them to possibly Terastallize too, and get away from it, you know, just to find the resist. It's just such a big gamble running offensive Tera types. And the other thing we have to remember too is the super effectiveness against other Tera type Pokemon. Sometimes when Pokemon Terastallize, it can be an absolute nightmare to deal with them. And so just having an option that's always going to be super effective against Tera Pokemon is going to be really nice. There might be some Pokemon that find a way to just be, especially in Battle Stadium singles, like be in the back of your party until the very end, and then just come in and surprise Tera and take them out. But if they're not on their last Pokemon, you're going to run into issues with lowering your attack and special attack. Maybe if you ran the White Herb, you could restore from that. But the problem with that too is now you're wasting your item slot, and items are like huge. You really need a good item, and wasting an item slot just for White Herb to recover for something like that is not that big of a like not that helpful. And I don't really think you'd want to run a Eject Pack with Tera Blast either on Stellar Tera types, because the thing with that is now you're giving away what your Tera type is right off the bat, and it's going to be way easier for your opponent to play around that. And then they know now too, like, hey, it's safe for me to Terastallize if they come up with their Stellar Tera type. Now I can just switch out of it or whatever, and they're probably going to go for Tera Blast and lower their stats. It's just going to be a lot easier to play around. So have fun out there, though. Don't be afraid to try this again on like offensive Tera types. I think Enamorus really won out big Superior is a pretty good contrary user, and outside of these guys, like I think you really need a fast contrary user to make this good anyway. But at least Superior has some really good recovery options. It has glare. You can run a bulkier set, and I think that can be really, really fun. So yeah, I'm really, really excited though. I've already been having a lot of fun using Iron Boulder. And yeah, overall though, just kind of a disappointing battle mechanic. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you're really excited. If you have any Pokemon that you're really highly anticipating trying to run Stellar Terra type on, and yeah, just give me your overall thoughts too. Whether you thought they could have done more, whether you thought it's pretty balanced where it is. And I think that's where we're going to wrap things up for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is GemiGo Gamer out.